Welcome to the show. You are listening to Revolution Radio with Jay and Scott. Scott, it's been a while. We took a couple weeks off. We've had some issues. Uh, everything from weather to COVID to technical breakdowns. You may not be aware of this, Scott, but my computer actually just shit the bed in some of
And you
that
didn't call
time.
me?
Uh, I was going to, but this was during the time when my family could have had
Oh,
COVID. So, aside from me taking the executive decision during the polar vortex and saying, you know what, I'm not going to make Scott freeze to death, so we're just going to not do the show for a while. Uh, my COVID crisis or technical breakdown. What's been your 2 weeks like, and what's been your favorite problem we had?
well, I guess I guess one of the problems we had, which my wife and I have two Toyota 4x4s, and yeah, no, they're American cars, assholes. And the both I didn't have any problems with mine directly, but once I don't know, for those of you who don't live in Kansas, you saw Texas problems. Well, we were a lot colder than Texas. Um, and we had some similar issues with, I've heard, the costs, depending upon what city, county has whatever financial agreements with their local gas and electric companies. I don't think here in Newton or in Wichita, whether they decided to, um, penalize people, or their agreements weren't so bad as usage went up. Now, usage is one thing, but supply is another. We have an ample supply, and so does Texas. There weren't supply issues. It was basically that some of these companies and some of these cities had agreements with these companies to, as usage goes up, so does the price of gas or electricity that they sell the city. And so it's like at the worst possible time, we're going to, for a few days, for 5 day periods. It's not long an extended 2 months. For 5 days, I heard that some places in Texas, and like I said, there some of these things are happened in Oklahoma and in Kansas too, as far as price. It went from as little as 2 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour to, what was it, $9 a kilowatt hour, to
Hmm.
give you an idea of the price increases. If that's not predatory price gouging, I don't understand the term, apparently. So there were people, and there are people, even in some close towns, that for a 4 or 5 day period of burning gas or, for say, electricity, they saw $5,000, $7,000 bills for a few days of electricity and gas. That should be illegal. There's to do that to families trying to not die from hypothermia. To do that to them is a punch in the teeth, kick in the balls, and everywhere else. That is absolutely predatory. And this falls upon the city officials because this has happened so infrequently. No one remembers that this council or the city council or whoever made the agreement and signed it. They never anticipated that the usage would go up so much for those days. They never thought they would see the ramifications of the bad deals they made, and now the people are seeing those ramifications. So you can, just like the ERCOT, whatever they are, the people in the council in Texas that manage their energy company and agreement, that all lived out of state. They all resigned, the entire board, because they were so embarrassed by this. And like I said, it's not a supply issue. Although when demand goes up, the sometimes that drives the price up as far as a commodity on the. But that's not where it wasn't an equal deal for commodity,
Did
price
your
increases.
did your gas bill go up?
I don't think here in Newton we kind of have like a shared thing
Right.
with the
Yeah,
city,
we're pretty
so it
lucky.
evens the price out for everybody. So I have a boiler, 100-year-old boiler downstairs covered in asbestos,
Oh,
and
good.
then radiators. But believe it or not, an old boiler that's inside a house, and it's in my basement, that is way more efficient with basic gas than any kind of electric heating system. So, although every room in my house wasn't as toasty, it still is significantly better than, and that's the only gas we use in the house. Everything else dryer and all that kind of stuff. We don't have any other gas operated stuff. So just that ran on the gas, and I'm sure it was running 24 hours a day. But we got down to negative 35 wind chill on a few nights,
Yeah, I believe so.
and yeah, and my wife's emergency brake on the truck, which I've trained her to pull that emergency brake, not just to leave it in gear. It's a 5-speed. It froze into place. So when and that's just a cable, okay? So, and it wasn't, we didn't get 2 tons of snow. We did have quite a bit of snow,
We
but
did, yeah.
but it froze into place for the sheer temperature, not because of moisture or ice. That's kind of like inside. It's not a place that just gets a bunch of moisture on it. It froze into place. And so she kind of had to drive on that with the emergency
So,
brake kind of
well, last
stuck.
was it? I think it was last Monday. This whole time has been like a blur to me. No, it wasn't. It was the Monday before. So, yeah, 2 Mondays ago, went out, and this was like really the second day of the polar vortex. Um, went out. It was like I said, it was a Monday. Me and my wife are getting ready to go to work, and both of our cars just wouldn't start. I mean, it was icy and it was bad, and I don't think. No, my wife was off because it was President's Day. That's why. And
Yeah,
I was gonna go open my store, but just wouldn't start. Did your cars start okay at least?
they did. They did. We have fairly new batteries in our car. So if you've got an older battery and the cold can absolutely, if you're the people who think that your parents, they said, oh, just put your batteries in your refrigerator, like your double A's or D's, you're an idiot. Don't do that to your batteries. That it's not good to store your batteries in the freezer. And I know a refrigerator, and I know a lot of people used to do that. And then later, when I understood the basics of chemistry and electrochemical process, that ain't good for your batteries. And that leave your iPad in the polar vortex and see if it ever comes back to life.
People
It
would
will not.
actually do that?
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Why would
People,
you?
especially in the past, I'd open people's refrigerators all over the place. I'd go, hey, get something out of the fridge. All right, good. They'd have batteries in the fridge. People used to do that. And that's also at a time when everything was kind of lead acid. So there wasn't probably as much damage, but do not do that to today's batteries, rechargeable or not. Don't put your lithium ions. Don't put shit in the refrigerator. It's not good because
That's funny.
that's a ramification
Well,
of it.
since we're talking about it anyway, I guess we should start off talking about the situation in Texas. I know
Before we go
it's
to
the big
Texas,
thing.
I want to say one thing real quick.
Hmm.
The saddest thing I saw was I went to this little, real close to me, went to this little junk sale at some old guy's church that gives you one of those religious cards in every bag, the crap you buy
Oh
from him.
yeah.
Outside, when I pulled up, and this was a Saturday morning, I think it was about 12 degrees outside. I pulled up on the curb in front. I was the only car there at the moment. And on the curb, there was a cat that was frozen to the concrete.
Holy
It was not a
Christ.
cat that had been run over. It had not been hit by a car. It was not skinny. And it was somebody's little calico cat froze to the M&F in the motherfucking street. And so I went in there and I told him, hey, did you notice there's someone's cat had a collar. There's someone's cat frozen to the street. And then he described to me the next door neighbor who had a litter box, by the way, on the front porch. He had a little gray cat. And I said, it's a tortoiseshell, but it's gray. And he goes, well, he works nights, so he's probably asleep. I don't want to wake him up. I go wake him up. Tell him he didn't let his cat in. It's now dead and solid frozen like a block of ice to the curb. I was like, so if you have pets, don't be an asshole. Don't be a piece of shit. Let your pets inside. Treat your animals like you would your
or just
children.
don't have just don't have animals.
Or,
Like,
or, or don't be a pet owner.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So if you're going to be an asshole, don't have pets. It was really sad. And I also saw a frozen puppy. So don't be assholes. Take care of your pets.
I like to talk about the other thing, having to do with you were talking about the bills that people have gotten, and how it is predatory. A couple of things on that real quick. My family actually has we sell natural gas. We have land in Oklahoma, so we got a message at the very beginning of this stuff that said, so your profits per unit are going to jump at about 200 to 1,000%. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, at that moment, we didn't know everything that was happening. Like, we just, we got that message. And my dad was like, well, we're going to probably be able to have a little bit of money after this. And then he messaged me or called me right back, and he's like, well, guess not, because they also informed me that the wells that they actually use to extract the natural gas were
Have
froze.
frozen.
Yeah, so it didn't matter. We moved zero. I think that has to do with some of that. And I also talk about one other thing as far as the bills. We have a company in our area that actually not too long ago had a mass shooting, and everybody had it's called XL, and everyone had the XL strong shirts, and that was the whole move. Oh man, we're here to support XL and its workers. And
Yeah, I actually saw
they
the police
they
cars
got
pass me going to XL when that happened.
they got a $1.2 million bill and had to shut
No, no,
down.
it went up. It was 2 million now. Their
Oh
bill.
my God. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
love the community aspect right there of the gas company who, yeah, gave him, I guess, a $2 million gas bill.
And subsequently had to shut down because they could not pay the bill.
Yeah, it's just it's disgusting, and like that's just here in Kansas. Like what a lot of these people in Texas are dealing with. Yeah, I read a story. Um, he a veteran who he lives on his retirement. He got a $16,000 gas bill after almost freezing
Mm-hmm.
to death, by the way, and all of his savings, everything is gone. Like he's just done. And the thing that I think that irritates me the most, and I'll let you speak on this here in a second, but is when asked about it, when the architects of this system were asked about it, they said, yeah, this is how it's supposed to work. This is capitalism, supply and demand. And they're right, though. That's the problem. They are 100% right. Everyone who's bashing these gas companies, you kind like I'm so torn in it. They kind of asked for it though. The deregulate what Texas did to deregulate and to almost secede in a manner of speaking from the rest of the country. Yeah, this is kind of what happens. Like, uh,
Instead of
especially,
separating, who they sell gas to, as far as like, okay, if you're selling gas to a city, which we require you to do, you can only have this much increase, or, blah, 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 with no artificial limitations. Where we want to know what your current output, your current storage is, but selling to other things that aren't directly related to people's freezing to death,
well, and the
maybe
fact that
then they can.
well, I think they got people too to lobby for this, right? Um, and deregulation means cheaper prices, blah blah blah. Uh, why would you put your welfare in the hand of a major corporation? They're never
How did
going.
you
They're
not
never
read that part of the bill?
exactly. They're never looking out for you.
Was
Of
there not
course.
one economist that just looked at that and went, "Wait a minute"? So you're saying if the need goes up tenfold because of a horrible, winter freeze, that people are going to get $20,000 bills? Is that what you're telling me? I'm not going to sign this piece of shit. They're going to come and hang me later.
Well, and what they like to say too, and what they sold Texas on. And by the way, I kind of have a back. log to this. I'll get to that in a second. But like what they sold people on is they said cheaper prices. This is how, deregulation means less taxes. It means cheaper prices for you. But in the end, it shows in the last decade, Texans have actually paid $28 billion more on services than the rest of the country. So they didn't even get the cheaper prices out the gate. Turns out one of the main people who was pushing for this legislation was none other than George W. Bush's brother, who happens to
Oh, that's
own. Yeah,
surprising. Uh-huh.
exactly. You go into this and like this is where people will, you know, you had uh, former governor of Texas,
A family whose oil business goes back to the literal Nazis. By the way,
right?
George Bush's grandfather was got basically in trouble for during a prohibition of selling anything to Germany before the war. He sold oil illegally to the Germans during and oil products to the
See,
Germans
good,
during.
good stock. That's where that's where they come from.
Yes, right.
But I mean, but you had yeah, like I said, like the former governor of Texas. I for some reason can't remember his name at the moment. But he went on shows and he was saying, well, if Texans had to go another 3 days without power, they would prefer that than to have the government involved. I don't think that's true. I don't think that that's exactly, true. And then they went ahead and this whole talking point of, well, it was actually the windmills that failed us.
Yeah, the
And
windmills only
nobody,
did a tiny
yeah,
percentage of their
thank you.
energy.
Thank you. And you're kind of more on the right than I am. So I appreciate that. Like, because it
You know,
was the most
I'll call out
idiotic
stupidity
argument.
anytime it is because preying on people, whether it be ideology or based on emotion or pure unbridled capitalism, when it comes to, wait a minute, does this capitalism taking advantage of people's basic needs and things they have to in order to survive? That's we're not talking about just them having a cup of gruel versus some name brand cream of wheat. We're talking about things that actually, and that's another. I mean, food prices and everything is probably in there too. The basics should at least have some kind of non-predatory clause in those kind of basics.
I agree. And you have to, one thing that it kept getting dunked on was the Green New Deal. I heard every conservative in Texas talk about, well, see, this is what would happen if we had the Green New Deal. Nobody
Right?
stopped
They
and
were
said,
using the windmills as an excuse
no one stopped and
to,
said,
to
okay, but this is what we have now. Not to mention the Green New Deal actually does call for a regulated reserve. So no, this wouldn't have happened because you would have had a reserve amount of energy of some form. And again, it's the pass the buck. It's pointless to really
And this
just
is also big oil asserting itself.
yes,
And
yeah.
we're a town, by the way, if you didn't know, we just had the other day, I woke up I was actually awake at the time, and apparently it was at 8:06 a.m. We had a 4.8 earthquake in Kansas. So for the longest time, and it's not the fracking process of extracting, but the high pressure toxic groundwater that they use as a mix of lubrication that they pump back into the ground, which is as bad as pouring buckets of shit in the ocean.
It's wonderful.
Um, those lubricate the now empty gas pockets and activate ancient fault lines and create them. So for a few years we had more earthquakes on average, not of course as high as intensity, but when you have I think 2 summers ago, we had a 5.6, 5.7 in Kansas. Okay, 5.7. It'll mess your foundation of your house out, put some cracks in your walls, and send your dogs into a frenzy. So
Well, and
we
absolutely none of our houses are built to withstand earthquakes because it
right.
wasn't a problem. We, yeah, it would be like, why doesn't your house have stilts for the floods that are coming? Oh, I don't know, because we've never had a
Yeah,
flood.
because I don't live in Osaka, Japan.
You
Like
know,
it's and the saddest part about all of this is, as much as the oil companies try to prevent, and a lot of people from the 70s try to remember, and of course there is Fukushima. but that was also an oversight as well, as far as their generators being on a low level where the ocean could come in with a tsunami. Nuclear power, modern nuclear power, is extremely safe and highly efficient by comparison. They have pushed nuclear power to the fringes as it's some kind of dangerous thing. It is not dangerous. You know, it is dangerous. $20,000 bills and power outages during minus 10-degree weather. That's dangerous.
I
I
definitely
guarantee you, more people in Texas died from the cold than of all the nuclear-related cancer deaths in the last 60 freaking years.
I would definitely agree with you. The only thing that I would argue, not even argue, but we're not even talking about that being an issue that we need to find some new source of power because we don't. This is just what happens when you have unregulated, unfettered, capitalist corporation control over
Right,
services. This is exactly what
right.
happens. And
I
let
mean,
me
I
ask you a
don't have that
question.
much faith in the government to run stuff efficiently, but if you said, hey, we're going to stop negotiating these deals, we're going to build standard modern nuclear power plants that don't have Homer Simpsons in them, and they don't need that many people. We're going to produce all this electricity, and we're going to evenly divide the electricity on a government owned grid, but it's going to cost a lot of money. So we have to, I'd be like, I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
Oh,
Just get
I'm
us
total.
out of that loop.
It's the argument of, hey, we might have to pay. I think in this area, there's going to be a bill coming down that'll. I think it'll require like a quarter of a cent per item we buy at the store, but it could facilitate fiber internet. I'm all down for that. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Bring
Well,
me
but
fiber.
is that who's doing that? Who's installing the fiber?
I don't know. I'm not sure. And by the way, this was something that was brought up about 6 months ago, so I don't even know if it's still a thing. But I'm just using it as a reference of like,
Well,
yeah, if we're
the
gonna get
thing is,
something,
it's going to subsidize one of the big cable or
oh,
telecom
of
providers
course it is, yeah.
because they don't want to put the money down themselves. So they say, hey, if you want us to, put Kansas into the 22nd century, you're going to have to help us and subsidize. Same shit with the railroads,
Hmm.
same shit with this and that. So yeah, if it was a government run deal where they were going to be separated, but they don't have even the machines to lay the fiber or willing to buy the machines to do it. But it's not even a complicated process
No,
these days.
I agree with you there too. I would much more get behind it if it was something like that. Dealing with the Texas situation though, I did want to ask you because I would say we'd be remiss if we don't talk about the Mayor Tim Boyd, who is I guess no longer mayor anymore, but
He's resigned, yeah.
he posted such things as only the strong will survive and the weak will perish. No one owes you or your family anything, nor is it the local government's responsibility to support you during trying times like this, he said. Sink or swim, it's your choice. Um, the
Like he's
city,
some kind of prepper himself.
the city and county, along with power providers or any other service, owe you. And of course, he does the all caps nothing. I'm sick and tired of people looking for a damn handout. Now, this I think for me, I mean, I hate to who dunk on people who've probably already been hurt, but for me, this is Texas. Like that right there is Texas, and
It,
I don't,
it,
you know, if you didn't vote for that guy or you didn't vote for that ideology, then I feel for you. I really do. But I mean, it wasn't what a few months ago. The Texas they were really planning on trying to secede from the country. They wanted to pass this whole thing. Oh, we don't want to be a part of America anymore. Now, of course, they totally want to be a part of it because we're sending millions and millions of
the state
dollars
of
down there.
emergency was
Yeah,
approved and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
yeah,
and
and
let me
actually,
explain something to you.
but
That guy's opinion of that prepper attitude, when he says you got to get look, that would be great if it was for a service that you didn't already pay taxes and have to go for, I don't know, government regulations on how it's done and piped in your house. You must be hooked up to the grid. It's probably law in the certain cities and just about every city. So you are required to have these services. You're required to get your house approved with that kind of stuff. So it's one thing if it's like, oh, you didn't, you weren't prepared for this issue, that the government doesn't make you pay things and make you work within their system to have this. So that's bullshit. That doesn't coordinate with, other needs.
Well,
You understand what I'm saying?
here's a better argument for that though is this. Most of the people, I would say probably a majority of those people, actually paid for the service. So yes, they do owe you something.
Yes, they
They
do.
owe
They
you
owe
the
you the
service
service
you
they pay. That's
paid
what I'm
for. Yeah,
saying.
you know,
It's not. It wasn't. He's acting like it was some kind of handout. After all, after it was said and done, that people were upset or angry because they don't have a 5,000-gallon storage tank of propane in their backyard in a bunker that runs off your dried poop outside to produce methane, so you can it's just stupid. You do pay for that service. You do expect basics of competency. You don't expect predatory pricing, and that was all there. So not only did the mechanics of the pumps that supply it fail, the energy grid, and of course Houston was another thing. By the way, people were pissed. There are some great pictures of the Houston suburbs that you can see downtown. And Houston's a big city, by the way. The Houston area, it takes you an hour to drive across Houston. So you just this huge cityscape. Everything was black other than the giant skyscrapers fully lit up.
no, yeah, yeah. No,
That was,
that was
and
taken
people were
care of.
just like, and they were telling people that the reason it took them so long to shut those places down and reroute that power was because those buildings were supposedly directly integrated into their, the backbone of the system. And I'm like, there's another hole. If you're an empty buildings, by the way, people, not working people, they were empty skyscrapers lit from floor 1 to floor 60. They were all lit up, every one of them, while everyone else was blacked out. And they were just, I was like, you're telling me you don't have a system to keep whatever, a city infrastructure, but underneath those buildings, you don't have the ability to throw a switch and turn the building off.
You know,
What?
the thing is, they probably don't because again,
No,
to to
they
to
probably, you're right. They probably
to
don't.
have that preparedness, to have winterized things, it would have cost them money, and they didn't want to pay that money, and they didn't have to because they weren't regulated. The other thing.
And for the fact that they were just like, well, what's more likely? We have a below zero temperature for a week and all that stuff, or well, that's probably one time in 100 years. Well, maybe so, but if that happens within 100 years, you're going to have a lot of dead people. You're going to have a lot of pissed off people, and
Well,
nobody will forget it very soon.
and honestly though, the ERCOT who you were talking about before, they were formed because in 2011 Texas had the same kind of situation, and the system they had then failed. So they brought ERCOT in and designed this whole group to make sure this didn't happen again. And lo and behold, it only took a decade.
And
And
Houston should
I
know
mean,
better. We're talking about like Hurricane Central.
right,
They
right.
still are just pitiful at like, please leave your cities and leave in an organized fashion. It's just mayhem. People are trapped on the highway for 20 miles straight on the output, stuck in their cars trying to stay warm when the hurricane blows in with 170-mile-an-hour wind. It's like, okay, just stay in your homes, people. You're in a death trap on the highway. It's just
Yeah, this whole
it's just
situation, it makes you say, like, I do believe that regulations in a lot of form go overboard. But god damn it, in some ways, I'm glad I live in a state that has a lot of regulations because I never lost a bit of power. I got to enjoy two
no.
2 days off in front of my PlayStation 5, you know, beating my meat and having fun while it was warm. instead of trying to, instead of, trying to
And
hurdle my
and
family
one thing
together and
that
not
we do
freeze
have the
to death.
benefit of is Kansas does every once in a while get that cold. So we definitely hit that dip every once in a while. Usually Texas and Oklahoma don't get the ice dip. It really only extends maybe to
Well, no,
northern
I'd
Oklahoma.
say Oklahoma, it does. I mean, I have family, so I've been there enough, and yeah, we've had a few um,
Yeah, but Oklahoma didn't
holidays.
have those problems either that bad.
No, not this time, but they have. They sometimes get it. Um, but all over right wing social media, and even Joe Rogan commented on this. Um, Ted Cruz, amidst all this, decided he was going to take a trip to Cancun. He claims that he had planned this before, but a leaked text message actually shows that that was not true at all. Um,
Let's get the fuck out of here.
that's essentially one of his wife's friends actually posted up Twitter, or not a Twitter, but
It's always the girls
it
that they're
is
like,
it's
"What are
always
you doing? I'm gonna."
well, Ted Cruz's wife actually invited her friend, and it was like
Right, right.
three or four different couples that she all invited to go to Cancun. Said it's freezing, we're gonna get the hell out of here. And so that one of the people decided they were going to post that online, so we all see that Ted Cruz was not planning this. The thing that like really comes to mind though is right wing Twitter, Joe Rogan, like I said, they all repeated the same thing. Well, what was Ted Cruz supposed to do? Was he supposed to go and tie people's pipes? Was he supposed to? And it makes you think. Well, AOC rose about $5 million for the people. The Houston Texans, many of them, Deshaun Watson, who doesn't even want to play in Houston anymore, J.J. Watt, who also doesn't play in Houston anymore. They raised, I don't know, I think it was like over $3 million worth of food and delivered it to
Well, even
people.
if he had just stayed and been a part of the emergency plan and
Yes,
talked to people and said, "We're going to get to the bottom of this," even if it would,
just
he
that.
didn't even
Yes,
get anything necessarily done. The fact that he was there and he was trying to help and take care of problems would have spoke so much more than, "Look, you guys, I'm
I'm going to Cancun. Yeah, no, and I mean, we've talked about Beto O'Rourke. I don't like Beto O'Rourke, but Beto O'Rourke made 700,000 wellness checks. He called people who lived there. Like Ted could have done that. He could have done, I don't know, anything. Like anything better than saying, "Fuck it, I'm gone. I'm leaving." Like it's
Now,
so.
I won't. I'm not defending him, but if I'd had the opportunity to escape that, which I can't because I have, you can't bring. I've got a boatload of cats with me, so I don't know if that's the greatest thing to take with you. But a lot you could say, well, if I had, could get a private jet and fly to Cancun and get away from it, but I'm not a senator or
Yeah,
or a
yeah,
congressman
you're
or a
not.
state representative.
Yeah, you're not
Right.
meant to represent these people. Yeah, I mean, you're just an average dude. No,
We
no,
need
I
to
would too.
expect more from these people that we elect as our representatives. We have to stop expecting the bottom denominator for their actions and the things that they do. I mean, we really do.
And honestly, we got to stop making excuses for him. Even if it's our side, it's especially if it's your side, go in hard. I mean, you expect the other side to kind of be what you think they are, but when your own side lets you down, go after them. Demand better. I agree. And with that in mind, now you and I, we need to work on a better name. I mean, everyone kind of has their own like little segment that they name things. I like Rising has their radars. Bill O'Reilly, actually, believe it or not, had like a really good one way back in the day, and it was like the other side of the coin. Everyone has names for like their segments. We don't really have one, except for why the left sucks, why the right sucks. Whatever. We need to come up with a good name for like our
How
own
about we
little
just call it the
segments.
paradox?
That's not bad. I don't mind that.
Just the paradox, which if those of you who don't know what a paradox is, if you were time traveling and you went back and saw yourself, it would create a paradox and everything space and time. And so it's more a statement for, here we go again. It's the people who, it's practice what you preach. And most people don't do that. Politicians don't do that, and get busted for the things they tell you to do. It's like Bill Gates telling you to be eco-friendly and do this and that as he gets on his private jet and toots around, using more carbon than you would your entire lifetime in a week. Yeah.
I
Thanks.
don't
I
I
appreciate that.
I don't mind that name, to be honest. I think that okay, yeah. And you know what? That actually opens us up to not just do politics because that's not what we only do. Um, we
Sure.
talk about all sorts of stuff. So, but I will start with, I guess, I don't know, what we call it, my paradox, my view in the I don't know. Um, mine though is going after, well, Democrats, quite frankly. And it starts off with
Well, you
something.
have to care about your own party, even if it's a party you support more of the time. If you don't care enough to know about the things they're doing wrong, how do you tell them what to do right?
That's exactly where I'm at. It really starts off simple enough, easy situation. That I think we've seen this situation before in many different situations as far as when politicians and video games collide. There is a
Oh, yeah, here we go.
uh, there is a posted threatened of a ban on the game Grand Theft Auto, and it's not only Grand Theft Auto, even though the bill itself is called the Grand Theft Auto ban. Um, it is violent video games, and this comes through the vehicle that is Democratic Representative Marcus Evans Jr. Apologize for
From
slipping.
Illinois.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I had family walking around me, and it was really hard to keep it. But anyway, back on track here. Bill HB 3531, and this would actually expand a bill that was a 2012 bill that said that you had to be a certain age to buy violent video games. He wants to extend this to everyone. So you were just not allowed to buy mature titles in Chicago. And as I'm sure it's a statewide, I'm sure all of Illinois, you just couldn't get mature titles. Claiming and citing that the whole reason why he feels so passionate about this is because carjackings have went up and he blames Grand Theft Auto on it. I would love to remind him that Grand Theft Auto, which believe it or not, maybe he plays it and he's like, I can't believe that this game is this old, but the game is 9 years old. And if he has just seen
That's no way. It's way older than that.
Grand Theft
Grand Theft
Auto
Auto
5,
itself is
okay,
like
fair enough, fair
is
enough, fair enough,
yeah,
yes.
it's like 20. Let's see, 23, 24 years old. The original Grand Theft Auto One, top
Fair.
down,
No,
was an
I'm with
old
you. I'm
PC
with you.
game.
But Grand Theft Auto 5, the most recent edition, came out 9 years ago. And trust me, to my dismay, they have not released another Grand Theft Auto. So if you're seeing more carjackings in the last year or so, maybe, I don't know, because people need money. And maybe instead of working on a bill to, I don't know, ban them from entertaining themselves and taking them away from their shitty lives, maybe you could make their lives better with a bill like,
Oh
I
yeah,
don't know.
this is such a distraction. This is a politician wasting your time, your freedoms, and on an issue that has been completely debunked every time when the Republicans and the Baptists and the religious right tried to attack everything from the 80s of Dungeons and Dragons to the 90s and violent video games like Mortal Kombat. That was
I
the whole
haven't, I
rating
haven't,
system that you see on your games, M8, 6, 13, 17, that crap. Now a Democrat is using the same excuse. It has been debunked time and time by every social psychological scientist, behaviorist out there that video games do not, number one, make you a psycho killer, or they don't, just because the Klebold's went and shot up their school, they didn't blame Doom for it or Halo or whatever. They tried to, but it's not the case. That does not make you a sociopath or a psychopath, blah, blah, blah. If you're playing Grand Theft Auto 5, you're playing through Grand Theft Auto 5, you're not out carjacking.
exactly. And in fact, you're being taken away from your garbage life that you've been given because people like Marcus Evans, who should be representing you, should be working on, I don't know, a jobs program or something to actually make your life better. No, he's worried about you playing video games. And I might
Because the
remind,
poisonous water running through your lead pipe system, poisoning your entire town for a decade, is not as important as,
let me
Grand
remind
Theft Auto.
Marcus Evans here that Grand Theft Auto has taken on a politician before, and in Grand Theft Auto fashion,
Oh,
if you look into Grand Theft Auto 4, you can actually go to the Statue of Liberty. And the Statue of Liberty just happens to look exactly like, at the time, Representative Hillary Clinton because she wanted Grand Theft Auto 4 banned and Grand Theft Auto won. So if you think that you can do better than Hillary Clinton, you're wrong because she has way more power than you, and she still got her ass kicked by Grand Theft Auto. This is so far from the base. This is so far from what the
and it's a
left
freedom
want
of
you to.
speech issue. It's totally a freedom of speech issue as well. I mean, this is censorship. It doesn't matter what. The same thing as Ice T's cop killer. It's just like that. It's the same. Well, them rappers saying stuff like that, they're making kids go out and. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. Your kid
This
has to
is
be some kind of drug dealer first
this is
before he
one
tries to go shoot a.
no, this is just one of many ways though that I feel like the Democrat Party in itself, they are so far from what their base is. They're so far from what real people are. And I get this question all the time. What can Democrats do to get the working class back again? And you know what? This seems really small and really stupid. It really is. It's insignificant because we know it's not going to go anywhere, but enough people see it and enough people react to it. The first thing you can do is stop doing crap like this. Actually worry about a populist mindset a little bit. Think about how well $2,000 check, the promise of $2,000 checks worked for you in Georgia. Now you do have to at some point come clean, come good on your promises, but the idea that at least you're trying to do something works way better than, hey, I'm going to take away your entertainment. I'm going to take away your freedom of speech. But it goes even further because I'm not done slamming shitty Democrats. And again, this Grand Theft Auto thing, it's nothing. It's nothing more than annoying, pandering, nanny state ideology.
Yeah, is there even a
The
group behind it, like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, or is there some you know, uh, Saving Black Lives mover against it, or I
no,
don't?
no,
Where does this even
there's
come from?
it's just this guy's imagination that it's going to do something. It's just from Marcus Evans Jr.'s imagination.
He
But
saw a nephew or something playing the game and went, "Well, what are you doing there, son?" He said, "Well, I'm about to carjack this bitch motherfucker right now, and so what's this?"
oh no,
What?
he's a fairly young black dude, so he probably
Oh, it is.
plays
I
it.
did. I didn't know what this
Yeah,
is called.
but okay, so let's take it to the next step, and that actually takes us to Senator Howe out of Virginia. They have a fairly popular mass transit system. The mass transit system in itself has always avoided taking on the name of any corporation, and they've been able to be sponsored by the community, just for charging for a ride across town to whatever destination you need to go to. Well,
Like
most
$2 fare or
recently,
something like that. Yeah,
yeah, most recently, Capital One has decided that they want their name on it.
wonderful.
Why does Capital One want their name on that transit system? Well, because Capital One is building a stadium in the
Hmm.
area and they want more promotion. Well, turns out that unfortunately the mass transit system is come under a lot of economic woes as everyone else has during this year. And so they have pronounced that they would actually let Capital One put their name on their mass transit system, um, but it's going to cost Capital One money. Democratic Representative Howe has a bill in which she is forcing the transit system to change their name to the Capital One transit system at no cost to Capital One, but it will still be funded by taxpayer money. It, it, it only took me a second to look into the situation to find out that Capital One, yes, has donated over $25,000 to Senator Howe's election campaign.
That we know of. That we know of.
And you know what, I actually, I buy that that was all they gave because you can buy a politician pretty cheap. Um, it's
Honestly, that
pretty
kind of money
impressive.
may get you a police officer too, but that's they sold you out for nothing. That's all
No,
I'm saying.
you're 100% right. But again, this is just another way that they don't understand their base. They don't understand working people. They don't understand the people that they say they're here to help. They're supposed to be the party of the people. That's the way they make themselves, and this is what we get. Now, I'm going to lean into two other situations here, if you'll bear with me for a second. And the first one of these situations has to be the utter repulsiveness that Democrats had to a certain former president's tweets, to his just grossly uncivilized way of speaking, the things that he said to people that he shouldn't. And oh my God, we have to get rid of this orange man because we need civility back in our country. I'm sure we can all remember this situation. Um, Now, at the beginning of 2021, we have our king and savior, our God, Joe Biden, and civility is returned, or at least one would think so, until we look at his nominees. As one of the nominees that he wants to appoint is Neera Tanden, who Neera Tanden has said some of the worst, vile garbage anyone has ever said. Let me just say the term choke on my balls surfaces a lot from Neera Tanden to, you would think, the right, but no, actually the left. She goes after the Bernie bro crowd a lot, and with often, again, saying things of choke on my dick. Vile, vile things that I've never even heard Trump tweet. And what is the big issue? What does the Democrats say about these nasty tweets? Well, everyone has a past. You should get over it. It's no big deal. What happened to civility? Now, it doesn't bother me that much. It really doesn't with Neera Tanden, and I actually agreed. With Trump, I actually thought some of his tweets and the things he said were pretty funny. I think some of that was actually the best part of Trump. And so I would give Neera Tanden a pass on that as well. But Neera Tanden, of course, is dealing with all sorts of obstacles involving her tweeting. And that is the bigger problem because it's the fact that she is going to be in charge of ethics, that she'll be able to control how companies are basically given an ethical pass for things that they do. And they're worried about her tweeting. They're not worried about the fact that she took money from the EU. She took money from Saudi Arabia, from Pakistan. She took money from Russia, from China, all in line to be a gateway into Hillary Clinton's campaign. 2015 had Neera Tanden getting very, very rich, as she was the perfect pipeline from many foreign countries, and was more than willing to take a little bit off the top and funnel that to the Clinton campaign to give them access to Hillary Clinton because at this point they just knew that Hillary Clinton would have been the president in 2016, and millions of dollars were funneled through Neera Tanden because she's great at raising money. And it's not just foreign countries that Neera Tanden took money from. It was also hedge funds, Wall Street, major corporations,
Sure, it's
all.
always global. It's the
Yeah,
people. You don't need to see things as like even when they take from one country or another, that company probably exists in 5 or 6 or 7 other partially wealthy or even third world country nations. I mean,
hmm
nothing is as easy and centralized. She's taking money from all kinds of people.
And if you want to go on the books, though, and you look at, I mean, I don't know, Scott, do you think taking money from foreign adversaries to promise connection to a potential future president, do you think that's legal?
It's not illegal because apparently, Joe Biden's
No,
son can do that.
let's go by the books, what it says. Do you think it's ethical? We'll ask you that. Probably not, right?
Uh, like I said, I apparently don't have the same definition of ethics as the U.S. governments do or our politicians do.
The point is outside of Bernie Sanders and Josh Hawley, no one else has brought this point up that Neera Tanden should not have the ability to police what is ethical and what is not ethical, because her herself, she is not ethical.
Right.
But they're more worried about goddamn mean tweets, and the Democrats aren't even worried about that. In fact, the Democrats are willing to basically stop everything and throw the entire kitchen sink at getting Neera
So we're
Tanden
being presented
approved.
with surface layer hypocrisy
Hmm.
of mean tweets versus Trump or versus some other. When in reality we should be at the deep level, attacking all of these politicians for filling their pockets full of foreign and mega corporation money, because that's eventually who they're going to turn to. They're going to sell America to in general.
Well, I know that I said I was going after Democrats, and so I don't want to, get off that message too much, but I will, in response to your comment, I'll paraphrase what Lindsey Graham said. He said, I don't really care about some of these accusations of money and accepting money because we all do that.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
of course they do.
you know what I'm saying? Like, and that, it makes me wonder though, what what are they willing to do in the Democrats as far as like how much are they willing to take for Neera Tanden, and why are they willing to take so much crap for someone who's, uh, let's be honest, not only is she untalented, not only is she, I don't know, she's the chaos theory to the left. I mean, she's going to ruin whatever sort of uniformity there might have been on the left, but she's also just unqualified for the job, like completely unqualified. Why would they take all of this? Why would they do all of this for her? And the only thing I can come up with is, well, the thing I started off with. She gets a lot of money from foreign countries. She gets a lot of money from Wall Street, from big corporations. And,
She's paid her political dues of going up that ladder, not dues to the public, not proving herself as someone who cares about the people. She's proved herself as caring about other politicians' pocketbooks.
well, and let's be honest, 2022 isn't far off. We got to start raising some money. So let's get one of our best earners a good position. But you see what I'm saying here with the Democrats? And I'm sorry that was kind of long-winded, but you can start off at something that's just kind of it's stupid and it makes you go, you bastard. Don't ban my
Don't think
video
for a
game.
second the entire political spectrum isn't full of good old boy syndrome.
But
It's like
you
how
know,
many principals didn't go to school to get a master's in education, or a doctorate in education that became a superintendent or a high school principal or the like. Probably not a lot of them. They got grandfathered in that position because, well, he's been around for 25 years and he's whooping kids into shape. No, it's that. It's not are they qualified.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, but I'm saying in general, from the point where I started my little segment there was it's hypocrisy. It's annoying in Chicago. But it's out of touch. It's out of touch with the people. Then you go to with Virginia, where I talked about the mass transit. It's a little bit more corrupt. It's a little bit more disgusting, and it's definitely out of touch with the people. And this is where it leads. It leads to a Neera Tanden, who is way, way out of step with what the people want. Not even meant to be in a position like that, and it is let's be honest, it's a threat to our country to be taking money from, China, from Saudi Arabia, from the EAU, to funnel it to a potential, presidential nominee. No, not even potent, but you know, to somebody who everyone believed was going to be the president, and is still taking money from these people. Now,
Oh yeah,
she
how
probably,
many
to be fair, she's
speeches in
probably
Saudi
stopped.
Arabia has Hillary Clinton spoke and gets a $400,000 check for going to speak at something in Dubai or Saudi Arabia?
No, exactly. And then, okay, we got that. And again, I'm almost done leveling these people for a little bit. Um, let's look at the final nail in the head. I'm gonna bring both sides here together. The the money, the stupidness, the whole thing, the out of touch with the people. And I'm gonna talk just briefly about why the GameStop investors will never actually they're going to be the ones who are potentially going to get in trouble. Wall Street will never have to pay the piper, so to speak. Robinhood is going to be fined. The firms that short sell companies and cost Americans their jobs, they're all going to be fined. Let's bring it together here with one Janet Yellen, who is now in charge of investigating these kind of situations. In fact, she's Joe Biden's woman as far as um, Secretary of Commerce, and I mean that's her position. She's the one who would be the person to check on these things. Um, she received $750,000 from hedge funds to go speak to them over the last 2 years. You think she's ever going to propose an investigation into these hedge funds that gave her almost $1 million?
Right. And
No.
there were people testifying in the last couple of days, GameStop redditors who were basically just saying, this is people's public money. This is we're working within the system. We value the company more than what the short sellers valued it, and there's nothing wrong with what we did. Absolutely not. And there were some great testifying people who talked about it,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
those that all that probably fell on deaf ears. They were talking directly to
Completely.
her.
And let's talk about you know, while we're at that real quick, we can talk about the fact that the short sellers, Robinhood specifically, should be investigated. They should go after them. They should investigate the Bloomberg terminals. None of it's going to happen when the Secretary of Treasury has gotten almost $1 million for doing little PUD speaking jobs from Wall Street. It's just not going to happen.
And
In
by the way,
fact,
they
let me,
paused trading on GameStop again just the other day.
after it surged, I'm sure. And let's go, real quick. Talk about Maxine Waters, who's good friends with Janet Yellen. Well, the committee that looks into these kind of things, especially with Wall Street, with um, really any sort of financial corruption like this. That committee is ran by Maxine Waters, and I wish I knew the exact name right now, and I don't. I apologize. But they had 64 seats. Well, not much longer after Janet Yellen was appointed to her position, Maxine Waters called for this committee to be cut down to 55. Now, the superstar, the junkyard dog of that committee was one Katie Porter. Katie Porter has some amazing videos of her just leveling into corrupt motherfuckers. They're great. Well, lo and behold, she gets cut off of this committee. She is like the LeBron James of the team, and she gets cut from it. Why?
It's
I'm
completely
guessing,
unsurprising too.
right? I'm, and they're all Democrats, by the way, all Dem. So when people when you think like, oh, when you think you're dunking on all Democrats, understand there's a huge world of difference between all of them. And it's important that if you are in fact a leftist or you're on the left, you know, sometimes you got to be ride or die with some of your people. You got to understand why they're doing stuff and whatever. But for the most part, don't let them become complacent. Don't let them become Maxine Waters, Janet Yellen, Neera Tanden. Again, to buttress what you had said at the end of our last segment, hold these people accountable. This is definitely what happens, and I think I'll let you go on your segment here in a second. In fact, I'll lead you in with this, and I think that it's going to continue to get even worse because I don't see that there's a Republican Party that's going to even give the Democrats a run for their money. I think we're without a real Republican Party for probably at least 4 years. And in that time, the Democrats going unfettered, unchecked, unregulated could cause some
and
major
unopposed.
problems. Exactly, exactly. It's going to cause so many problems in our country. A party
Yeah,
of
I
one
don't
is
see the
dangerous.
Republican Party coming back at any level like they have been before. And I don't think it's necessarily even a voting issue. I don't think that that even the public sees them, the people who are conservative or say conservative Christians or anything like that. I just don't think that they see any of them as supporting what they want to support. Because I do know for a fact that when we talk about online freedom of speech, that we deal with giant companies, and that I've now started to ban people on the left just as much, because this kind of ideology will eat its own even after you call somebody out for it. Like in defense of Pedro Pascal, because Gina Carano said, in a completely benign statement she spoke very little on social media, but in a completely benign segment, she said, when we, punish people for, basically saying that the actual Nazis made sure that they, censured people and pulled people into their fold by threats of removing them. We have to remember that's what they did. And somehow that got said, oh, well, that was an anti-Semitic statement. And everybody's like, what? Well, Pedro Pascal said basically the same thing. Almost word for word, he said a basic statement of non-fascist, we don't need to become fascists. But because she's kind of openly on the right person, they demonized her statement. Well, now that's starting to even happen to, was it Henry Cavill, Superman, who is a lefty? He
I
dated Gina Carano.
I prefer to call him the Witcher, but go ahead.
The Witcher. And I don't know Henry Cavill's politics because he's not really, I don't see him as a loudmouth on the political scene, but the Twitterati were going after him. And it even extends to, who were they going after? Cory Booker's girlfriend, what's her name? Ahsoka.
Rosalia, no,
The
not Rosalia.
Twitterati were going after Rosie because supposedly
What is her
10
name?
years ago, uh,
Rosario Dawson. That's her.
Rosario Dawson,
Yeah.
she's the girlfriend of Cory Booker, who's a known Democrat. But she apparently had been sued or something many years back for supposedly misgendering somebody in an argument. And
It's
I think
true.
the case was dropped, or she settled, but
I
I
think
think it was dropped.
if I remember right, I think she settled.
She may have, and that's just crazy. Well, obviously, it was a civil suit. She wasn't accused of a crime, but for the simple fact of that she misgendered somebody, now they're going after her. So, and you say, well, who cares? That's not going to happen. Yeah, they just got Gina Carano, who was, by the way, one of the most popular just the other day. She was the number one most trending on every single network because they fired her over social media. They didn't even call her. People called her and said, oh, by the way, I think Disney's fired you. This coming from Disney, who is so progressive that they'll take John Boyega's picture in the Star Wars franchise. When they sell the movie poster here, John Boyega's picture is right next to Rey. It's just about as big. But in China, they shrunk his head down to a size of an inch because they know the Chinese were basically racist. And we know that because the Chinese have done all kinds of horrible things
Well,
to any of the Africans and stuff that immigrate to that country.
Chinese government would be,
Well,
yeah,
sure, of
yeah,
course, the
yeah.
Chinese government, but the CCP is all, sees all, looks all, makes all, and defends all of that. Now, I have no problem with the Chinese people. I live with two people from Hong Kong for years, although Hong Kong's a little different. But the point of it is, it's another point of hypocrisy, and we can demand that our lawmakers. This is where I'm leading back into the Republicans. The Republicans had some big opportunities to, to once again try to ensure that free speech is protected from these private social media companies by the fact that they aren't subject to the same laws and to the same prosecution for libel and other things as in news aggregators and the things that all the news companies have to be liable for. If Rachel Maddow says this person's a murderer, I know he raped 10 people, it is, and she has no proof, she's going to get her butt sued for $1 billion. But that's just the whole thing. If you go on there and say that if you go on there and say that on some Google platform or some, Facebook or whatever, Facebook or Google are not liable for the things that you
Right,
say.
right. Section
But
230. Yeah.
they've started to act like they are by removing things, whether it be, and there's lots of lefties that have been removed. Dr. Drew and a host of super qualified doctors not discussing anything controversial. They were just talking about what therapies were helping people besides the vaccine. Where can we go? What can we produce? Bam, gone. Their entire podcasting channel gone. I mean, we can demand as a population that they protect our right to discussion and to discourse. If they're going to get money and they're going to get subsidies and they're going to get protections from the government, then they need to fall in line with our Constitution. Republicans had many opportunities to do that. We saw Facebook, we saw Zuckerberg, we saw Twitter, what's his name?
Jack
Jack
Dorsey.
Dorsey. We saw all these guys, even Joe Rogan and some other places. We saw these guys go in front of people and be asked questions about, why are they censoring? Oh, we're not censoring the right. We're not doing that. It's just our algorithm. Well, yes, they were. And, there's lots of leaked memos within Google, Facebook, all of these that hired people like ethics committee people who were generally picking out other people, but it never stays with one side and it moves over. And now we're starting to see censorship in places that don't make sense. It's censoring people and pushing cancel, this show, get this person out of ridiculous things. Like I said, Rosario Dawson, for somebody accused her of misgendering him years ago. You want her out now? That's Cory Booker's girlfriend. They had an opportunity to do that. They had an opportunity to, I don't know. As far as Joe Biden putting in all these decrees and removing things just left and right, I don't understand what could even stick around. Joe Biden has an opportunity to put in somebody in the FCC that will protect us. Supposedly, this guy's not so bad. We'll have to see. Of course, I believe in net neutrality. I do not believe in that. The net it's just like gas. It's a utility. It should be somewhat, controlled and modernized. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I was just gonna say, if I may, like, I agree with most of everything you're saying, and I've said it before. There's so many people who were they were celebrating Trump got kicked off Twitter, and I think I said it on the show. It's gonna happen to the left. Wait till it happens to AOC. Wait till it happens to somebody who is also, who says things that they claim are false, but it's actually true. I'm not saying Trump said things that were false that were true. Most of the things he said that were true were false, but a lot of times AOC says things that they say are fake, and when you look into it, no, it's actually true. It just happens to go against the Clintons, it goes against the Obamas, and they don't like that, so they say it's false. So yeah, I mean, Chapo Trap House is a good example.
Yeah, and, yeah, and
They got shut down. They're a
go ahead.
leftist group. Um, so I agree completely with you. I think part of it too, though, and I know this is easier said than done, especially in not only the economy we're in, but in this, um, in just the way that we communicate. I also do think that we need to innovate and we need to move on. Meaning this, I think we got to be done with like Twitter and Facebook. and we need to, Clubhouse is a really good place to go. It's all, I mean, New York Times though right now is trying to censor and shut down Clubhouse, but they have nothing to stand on because Clubhouse works like a live podcast. It actually works like live radio. You're debating with people back and forth. People are fact checking you right there on the spot. It's actually a pretty innovative idea, and it's pretty cool. I think though that has to be the only way we get around with some of these like tech moguls who
And I am
they want to
100% agree
control
with that
speech.
too.
But let me say this, to kind of buttress your point though, other things can't really happen when Jack Dorsey and Google keep buying them up and shutting them down. And that's
Or
where I think
or what happened recently with the what was the other platform that a lot of people from the right were moving from Twitter? What was it called?
Parlor, yeah,
Parlor. What
yeah,
did
just
Parlor
simply
had
shut
that?
down. Yeah.
Yeah, and who ran their servers? Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos, yeah. Yeah,
One
sorry,
switch and
I
they're
didn't,
down.
I didn't include
And it
Bezos in
was
that.
illegal, by the way. They broke contract. They
They
had a
did, they
contract. There
did.
was no legal reason. But Jack Dorsey, he don't give up. He does what he wants. He'd rather pay $1 billion fine or pay them in court and go, it doesn't matter what you say is illegal. I don't give a shit about the law. I don't give a shit about free speech. I give a shit about what my constituents and what my ideology is. And
And
I don't like
what
you.
my money
You,
can
yeah.
buy. No, and
My money can buy the law, is what it is.
exactly, and that's why I think though one of the only things that we have as a weapon would be, and it's kind of depressing considering my segment talking about how most of the Democrats are bought and sold, and there's no point, and that's not what I meant, but I think one of the only things that we can actually do is hope that an antitrust committee actually gets going on big tech. And this is the thing, one of
It
the
has to
many,
happen. It has to happen.
for me, it's one of the many failures of Trump. I mean, this is a
Oh,
perfect Trump situation.
some of our
You know what I'm
previous
saying?
presidents, well, I take it at least back to Obama. And the reason I say this is you can kind of give you can give Clinton, you can give even the Bushes, you can give previous presidents kind of the because the technology wasn't really there. People weren't almost required to use these things to communicate, and
Hmm.
there was no way to convey. Like, for instance, our hacking laws are absolutely stupid because they were written using the basis of like telephone espionage. They didn't have anything to do with computers.
Right. No, and
So,
look,
so when they,
I was
yeah,
just
so
gonna
I
say,
can give those people a pass. But when it
I
comes
know
to,
you're going with
right,
this, and the fact that like this really came to be under Obama, and I get you. The only reason why I call it a Trump thing and why he let us down is because this was actually perfectly aimed at being a Trump opposition. Big tech is Trump opposition. It's a right
yes,
wing
I agree.
opposition. Now for Obama, it actually serviced him, so I could actually see why
Sure it
he
did.
didn't. Now, let me. I don't excuse him for not doing it, but I see why
Right,
he
the
didn't.
need was there, but it,
Yeah,
it wasn't
it's
it
kind of
wasn't, and
like
it should have been on Trump's agenda.
it's
It should
kind
have
of
been
like
way up there.
if Bernie was president and he didn't address healthcare. You know what I'm saying? It's like that. So
I agree. It should have been. It was just as important to me as a border wall was for some people. I would have rather
right.
seen the antitrust go after big tech, and their reach. And I really didn't give a much about Russell Brand recently, but he's actually doing. I know he's kind of no, it's just a hippie, no.
He's a
My do a better British guy, by the way. He's just got that thick Cockney accent. But he's Russell Brand's got a little podcast that he does, and I'm sure he'll repeat the shout out to us, won't you,
oh,
Russell?
I'm sure.
But
Yeah.
but he's hitting some of these issues, and they are not necessarily partisan issues. They are issues. He's talking about India and India's farming crisis, and Bill Gates getting involved and buying up and basically trying to control India's food production. These are not conspiracies. These are absolute things. Modi, the president, the newer one, he has spoke about it. I mean, these big tech companies
That's
are getting
okay.
their
Yeah,
fingers in
I was
to
gonna
the
say that's
basics
probably
of
for.
everyday life around the globe. And when they decide to squeeze, you're going to wish you had any nuts left for them to squeeze, because at that point they're going to own it all. And the dystopia of what is it, like a Blade Runner or Aliens, where it's like, do you work for the company?
No,
It's like, oh
and
shit.
by the way, yeah, I think next episode we definitely have to talk about what you were just talking about. It's just we're getting toward the end of it, so I wasn't. No, I think you're right. It's just my thing that I would say is I think that the antitrust, investigations, and let's just be honest, the shutdown of these monopolies, I think that's our only hope. My advice, I guess, would be is to not get too caught up in the culture war. I have been seeing the whole Gina Carrero thing. Like, it's all over right wing media, and I'll be honest. My take on it is a little bit different. I think, like, partially, um, I think it's interesting that you have people who again, they're all libertarianism, free capitalism, unfettered, unregulated, power for corporations. And then they cry and complain when a corporation fires somebody for doing something they didn't like. It's like, well, you gave them that power. You said you want corporations. You said they shouldn't be
Yeah,
beholden
and
to
nobody's
their
saying that
employees.
Disney didn't have a this was somehow illegal. There is obviously a lot of hypocrisy involved, which I have no doubt, as far as how they treat actors differently concerning what kind of rhetoric that they do or don't talk about online, or what's expected of them. She's just an example of someone
No,
who barely has said anything but the thing was, she was extremely popular. She was a good actor. She doesn't have a lot of past history mud
I
behind her,
no, and I
and
look,
people wanted to keep her.
you only touched on it for a second, so I'm not going after you on that. I've seen a lot of other ones. So there's like the Quarterling, who I kind of watched him for a little bit. His channel, well, I don't know his name is, but the channel is called the Quarterling. The
I know who he is.
last five
He has
episodes,
1.06 million subscribers.
all all of them have been about Gino Carano. The last five episodes, and the thing that irritates me about this dude, sorry, I'm just small rant. He almost always starts his episodes off saying, "Well, YouTube doesn't pick up me on the algorithms," and I'm like, dude,
I have to skip that part.
you have the little plaques that show how many YouTube views you get. Shut up. Like, obviously,
Yeah,
YouTube,
I
you
don't
know.
like a lot of YouTubers that do that. I like the ones that go, "You like me? Let me know." Lots of ways to let me know, and then that's all they say, because everybody's aware of Patreon, everybody's aware of live chat donations, and
Yes, I
everybody's aware of it now.
I like the Mark Norman, the comedian, his podcast. He's like, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you hate me, subscribe.
Yeah,
you
well,
know,
and the funny thing is, it's just as good for you to give somebody a thumbs down, because it just has to do with watching and responding.
and
That's how
interactions. Yeah.
that earn income.
No, I
Yeah,
agree. No, but yeah, just to go back to my point, I think the only way we stop this from happening is to be able to innovate other platforms, and we're not going to be able to if Jeff Bezos, Jack Dorsey, and the weirdo alien who owns Facebook and Google, if they all own every platform that we can
yeah, and
we can
Disney,
create.
X-Men, entire Marvel universe.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
own they own Star Wars. So people, your favorite franchises are with. They're not in your reach anymore. They're going to go down the toilets. I know a lot of. I'm not a Star Wars fanatic. I mean, at all, in any way, shape, or form. The Mandalorian was good. I
Yeah.
haven't seen much else good in Star Wars in a long time.
I think,
So
but yeah, I think the only way we do this is through antitrust, because we have to first break their power before we can innovate and move on, and tell them, like, look, if that's your standard, cool, go, fine, we're going somewhere else. It's just right now we can't go anywhere else. Um, I do have a question though to ask you, because I don't know if you're, I haven't finished The Mandalorian, but there was talk that The Mandalorian was over and there was something else starting. So, like, is it
So they
possible?
were going to do a spin-off with her. That's another thing that
Okay,
had to
see,
do
that's
with
what. Go ahead,
the
sorry.
Rangers. Like, whatever she was a group of, they were going to do a spin-off with her, because she was, before this crap and after it, extremely popular. She has a cool history too. She was an MMA fighter. She was an American gladiator. She's very attractive as well. She's she's a girl who could kick your ass. She's not a rail skinny, and look, she was in Deadpool, and she's the girl who plays the bad guy girl who fights Colossus. Her name was Angel Dust. If you guys didn't notice that, she gets in that fight with Colossus at the end of the first movie. So my point is that she's a good actor, and I don't mind having big tough mean women, in their deal, and
Let's be honest,
it's
you like it.
dude, yeah, yeah. I mean, she's hot too. I mean, really, what is there to lose there?
No,
It's like if
I'm
you
no
lose the fight with some jackass, she can finish it.
I'm no Gina Carano stan at all. In fact, I even kind of push back when people say, "Well, she was the most popular thing." Well, yeah, she was because she was fired. Like it was a big controversy. Of course she was.
Well,
Like
there were many times
if
that her and Pedro Pascal were. When I say when anybody says she's the most, it's who's talking on like the top 10 platforms. What's the number one name that's going through the loop at all time? That's how they determine that. So it's not something that stays static
right,
and it
but
goes up and down.
again, at the time when they were claiming that she was, yeah, because it was like it was a big issue. If Britney Spears fell off stage and ripped herself V to A, she would have been the most popular person right then. Like
Yes, yes,
Save
and
Britney's
that's
vajayjay would have been trending. In fact, actually,
and a lot of this
I
is
did.
because there are a huge amount of Star Wars fans since
I'm sorry.
like 1978. So this is people are invested their souls and their money and collectors and resellers and everything into Star Wars. Now, if I
Mhm.
had felt like that about Transformers, I would have shot myself in the face repeatedly after the first Michael Bay movie came out because it was such trash. I threw up as I left the theater.
Uh,
But
to
that's how
each his
people
own.
feel. They
Yeah,
feel really strongly.
to each their own, and that's totally cool. I'm fine with all that. Again, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I'm for or against, you know, that kind of thing. Like, because I honestly, um, I'll put it this way. Um, Football player. I'm a big, fan of the NFL. Football players had to go through a lot of crap to be able to get where they are now. We have somebody like Justin Jackson, who's a running back for the Chargers, and he's constantly putting out political tweets, and it's not popular political tweets. He's a leftist through and through, like a true leftist, like more left than I am. But it wasn't long ago that they were getting, blackballed for being political online. In fact, um, one of the quarterbacks for um, the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, he actually was talking about it on the Pat McAfee show. That he said like 2, 3 years ago there was a memo sent to all the NFL players that basically said like, don't share your political views online. Like if you do it and you get fired, you get cut, that's just part of it. Like, and in fact, the NFL had to fight. Um, the NFL's Players Association had to fight the NFL because they were going to put that as a break of contract if you post something inappropriate on social media, and that would be another thing like that I would argue if you're someone in Hollywood, if especially if you're on the right wing, but in anyone, honestly, before you sign that contract, make sure it has something that has a clause that doesn't say that you're restricted on what you post on social media, because I guarantee you, without looking at it, I guarantee you there was a clause that Gino Carano broke by posting what she posted, because they probably had something very vague, very generalized, but it was like, if you post anything inappropriate on social media, you could get fired. I almost guarantee they had something on it because it's almost
Well, I
standard.
would I would say that, but some, not necessarily her direct co-stars, but it's more like what they find offensive. So it's so subjective that
Oh,
sure, she
100%
could have been
yes.
fired for it.
But that's what I'm saying though. Like, and of course, like, they would look at, let's say Pedro Pascal, said, something.
So he said Trumpers were Nazis, just
Yeah,
basically a couple
or, or,
times.
or just tweeted spics, like, but they love him. If they're like, I love this dude, they wouldn't fight. They wouldn't. Who cares? But be it they didn't like her political views, of course they would use it against her. That's all I'm saying is like, so
Right.
if
But,
you're going
and in
into that,
reality, even if she did have a clause or any of those actors had a clause, they could find a way to just, they'd say, you know what, we're done with the series. They don't even have to give them an excuse of why they're changing things up.
highly
So,
possible too, but I'm just saying like that's one thing that they could do, and a lot of them could do, and I think anyone. In fact, if you're getting hired onto a big company, look at the contract, see what it says
yeah, I
about,
mean, and I think
you
NFL
know,
players, NBA players should be able to say what they want to if they want to embarrass themselves too, and say, it's like if Tito, what's his name? What's Tito's last name?
Ortiz.
Yeah, if Tito Ortiz, like, I don't think Tito Ortiz tweets out crazy stuff.
I don't
I'm
think
just
so. I don't
saying
know.
Tito Ortiz is, yeah, he's a good fighter in his time, but he is dumber than a box of rocks, and
Oh, he
everybody knows
is.
that.
He really is.
Yeah, he really is. Like I like Kendi. He's one of those guys, and you don't. If you just hear him saying something or tweeting something, he completely didn't understand and used something that could have been completely offensive, and he was like, "I thought that means we everybody loved each other, have fun." He doesn't know, and
Class.
there are always those
Let's go classic.
excuses.
Let's go classic. Go Manny Pacquiao. Manny
Yeah,
Pacquiao is his
yeah,
anti-gay thing. Like, you should be able to say, I don't agree with it. I don't think it's cool to, say, well, it's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. Of course, that's kind of funny to me, but like, no, if that's your view, cool. You shouldn't get fired for that. But
yeah. I mean,
I think,
people. The thing is, people can use their pocketbook and their ticket purchasing power, etc., whether it be memorabilia, your jerseys, or your films, or your books, or whatever. They can use their money power to respond to that. And if your popularity and stuff dies down because of what you've said, well, then you're probably going to lose your show or your position or whatever. It can be done with the power. Now that's the part of capitalism that can work
hmm
for us.
very much
So,
so.
and that's the way it should be. If somebody I really liked said something absolutely horrible, I'd be like, you know what? I'm not gonna. If they said, you know what, China's the way to go, screw free speech, death to America, go for the CCP, I would be like, you know what? I'm going to spend money to hate on you. Is
Okay,
basically what I'm going to do.
or just like Mulan, good example.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
found
I
out a
would be
lot
done
about
with any of
we
your
found a
stuff.
lot of stuff out about Mulan. Mulan tanked. It did horrible. A
Oh
lot of
God.
people didn't watch it. Let me ask you a question though, with that in mind, and this will be the end of this. Um, why are conservatives bad at using their capital as a tool to move the ideology of like corporatism? Meaning this, I see this in right wing media all the time, especially the YouTubers and stuff. I'm tired, they say how tired they are of woke commercials and woke companies. But why would these companies be woke? Well, obviously, it's capital. I mean, no corporation
Or
spends.
perceived capital. They've made a commercial like, and I could care less. By the way, I've been in many interracial relationships in my life with people who are much, much darker than me, women. Uh, but let's just say that I have noticed by watching TV, YouTube, and all those kinds, there have been many, many commercials with a particular husband and wife set with a black woman and a white man. Well, there's of course nothing wrong with that.
Hell no.
I have never seen that many commercials in a row. We're talking Infinity commercials for cars. We're
No,
talking
no, you know what? No,
SpaghettiOs.
I don't even I don't even count that because that's fairly like representative. Let me
Yeah, it's
like,
not
well,
weird, but
no,
my point
you
is
can throw
that
that
they are
off on that.
using
Let
they're
me
just using lots of anything
let
they
me
can
throw
perceive to be very progressive to say,
let me
look at us, buy our macaroni.
let me throw you a better example. I think there's some like oatmeal milk that has a commercial, and the dude, the president of it, is wearing a shirt as he's playing a piano or a little keyboard and he's singing a song. It's really annoying. I wish I knew the name, but he's wearing a shirt that says anti-fascism as he's singing the song for oatmeal milk. And you find out he spent $5 million on this commercial. So obviously, no corporation spends $5 million to not expect a return on it. That would just be stupid. Like, why is it though that this is obviously? And by the way, this dude was getting dunked on left wing Twitter.
Of course.
I mean, because that's the way like
Well,
the leftists. To be fair, I just let me get this out real quick. The leftists in the circles I run, we're not fans of these corporations either.
no,
We know they're pandering to us. We hate most of
right.
them. But my question is why do they respond to us and try to get us to buy their product? What does that say? Is it that the fact that the left actually do spend their money on these products, or
No, I don't think, I really don't think that's the case. I don't think people's buying practices even are changed or motivated that much. Like if you just, for some weird reason, hated Shaquille O'Neal, would you want to go to the general to get your insurance, or would you be pissed off at Tony the Tiger because he did a Frosted Flakes commercial with the Shaquille O'Neal? No, you even if you did, you'd be like, I'm still gonna do that insurance because it's a deal, or I'm still gonna buy Frosted Flakes
I
because I
don't
like
know,
them.
dude. I don't know. I mean, there you can, I think it's at the end of a fiscal year, and you break down by quarterly. Goya is an example.
God, wouldn't that be a great
Like,
report? Like if it was really collated and really done, and you could have examples of, say, just what is considered to be a woke commercial versus an increase in sales
right. I'd
and
love to see
availability.
that.
If you could break that all down, that would be so awesome.
I would definitely like the only example I can come up with is that Goya lost a whole lot of money this last year. Like their sales went
Right.
down,
Because they had like,
and
what was it they did?
they,
The pro Trump thing, wasn't it?
yeah, they prostated on Trump, how great he is, and then the Trump
And that's a
family,
Mexican company, by the way.
yes, the Trump family took it upon themselves to take pictures in the White House holding Goya beans, which is also so pandering and stupid. But like that's an example though, and of somebody taking a stance, a company, and then losing money. I don't know. I just think I think it's an interesting question. I would love to have somebody break it down a little bit, maybe
Yeah, my
analytically.
example wasn't really a pandering thing, but I more see it as many attempts of absolute pandering. Just if because if you were doing commercials based on population and based on perceived, who you're trying to sell people, or just the demographic, then you would see a completely different uh, set of circumstances. And it seems like a lot of things that it's just like the commercials that are still should be in your face that say, in these trying times, we need to work together and support our first responders and blah, 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 blah. There have been what company has not put out a "We still love America even though you're dying" commercials, and we've
Yeah,
sent
yeah.
boxes of cereal to your
Oh,
to
yes.
nurses, whatever it is.
No, and the only reason, like one of the reasons why I didn't run with your premise of the interracial couple is because I actually don't believe I don't think it's really that progressive to have an interracial
No,
couple. I think
you're
you
right.
run on that
It
you run on that trope that right wing is racist. And I get what you're saying.
no, no, no.
I definitely get like where you were coming from.
I've done this thing where I sit down and I watch the commercials and I digest. Now I have an advertising degree, so you could say it's like the trope of right being racist, but I'm really looking at the demographics of these commercials. Do I think people who watch Hulu are a majority of progressive people? No. I think it's everyone who doesn't watch Roku and watch free television, free shows. It's everyone. But at the same time, like for instance, my one of my Roku's is not even signed up under my name. I bought it at a garage sale,
Yeah.
so it's really not, other than my if they unless they know my IP address is connected to a white couple, they're not going to know that. But I'm analyzing it more of, are they pumping a demographic commercial based on Kansas population because they're going to know even if my
Right,
IP address.
exactly. Yeah, like what is the actual what are they using? What are the metrics? Yeah. And I would be curious. I honestly would be like what you just said, are Hulu people, are they more progressive? I don't honestly, I think they might be more left leaning. I really do because you got younger
If
people
you
who
just tell
use.
me that 5 years, 10 years ago about just like online, because those things really didn't exist in the same capacity, I would say yes. But my parents are conservative and live in Texas, and all they watch is YouTube and Hulu.
Okay,
So,
no, fair
and they
enough.
are fuddy duddies when it comes to technology. So
I
I
think
think that time has
are they
passed.
are they super? Well, no, they are, aren't they? Like your dad was
Yes,
almost into Q at some
my
point,
mother
wasn't
has
he?
been expecting Armageddon from Pat Robertson and
Okay, all
probably
right.
bought every single one of his books. So yes, yes, they are.
No,
And
okay.
I'm just
You
saying,
I concede my point. Yeah, no, never mind. You're
yes,
it's just the only reason why I would almost think that, and it's because the right wing people I know, and I don't count you in this conversation because you're not that far right wing as some people I know. Uh, it's almost impossible to have a conversation with them about entertainment because, like almost everything, they're like, man, they're anti this, they're anti, like they're very political and very culture warish with what they'll watch. Like they won't even watch
well, see, my
family.
dad loves
They'll be
South
like,
Park.
I won't watch Family Guy because Seth MacFarlane's a big leftist. And it's like, really, dude? Like, for one, he's
Well,
not.
he may
But
be a
two,
leftist, but
who
if you
cares?
look
It's
at what he
funny.
makes, he
Yeah,
bags on everyone.
he does.
Just
Yeah.
like Trey Parker and Matt Stone, they do the same. My dad loves freaking, South Park because even though it's a crude, rude show about kids in every weird scenario and Cartman being a Nazi, and the thing is, it's all funny, and it is funny. By the way, if
And
you don't think it's
very
funny,
smart too.
their humor is deeper than that, and so
Hmm.
is a lot of Seth MacFarlane stuff. He just, especially like the Family Guy that does the Disney-esque special with, and it's basically saying, by the way, if you didn't know, that Walt Disney was an avid supporter of the Nazis.
Oh,
He was a
definitely.
member of the Nazi Party in America.
Yeah,
So,
hated the Jews. Hated the Jews.
oh yes, yes. So don't think that these companies that are so progressive now and show all this wokeness, they're really just covering up, trying to hide the fact that in the past they have been the biggest pieces of and you will ever find, and which once again reinforces the everything is kind of hypocritical. So
That's part of
yeah,
it.
I
No,
mean,
and I think that pretty much, again, I was just throwing that out there, and I will say, there is some breaking news, that I just like. I hate leaving it on this because I know nothing about it, but we might as well at least. I'll just mention it before we say goodbye.
just tell me, man, just tell
But
me.
the U.S. has launched an airstrike against an Iranian-backed force in Syria. That just happened probably
Yay,
an
we're back,
hour
and
or
we
so.
got out of
Yeah, I
Syria.
know, I
Now we're
know.
back in Syria.
I know. I think I have a feeling our next episode, which I do plan on getting done quicker, this go around. I'm pretty sure we faced the weather, we faced the COVID, we faced technology. I can't see another obstacle, but I have a feeling that our next episode we will be talking about this and that Joe Biden has led us back into the Middle East full force. I mean, we
Yeah,
weren't out of
we
it,
go
but
attack Iran or
we're
something.
exactly we're going back and yeah, oh God, I know. I'm not happy. Anyway, though, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for joining me, Scott. We will be back soon.